You know, and he's in his 70s already, so you know there's not that many years left. He's the last one, and he's involved with what's going on and there's prophecies to where he would be, and he's so nice now, but the scripture says that they'll turn their back. There has been persecution started in the United States. We see all the time through the history persecution of Christians in many countries, but it never really has hit America. Now it is. It is in America. And they are being persecuted. And in fact, was it a professor or someone had said out east that it was a professor, a psychology professor, some said that the Christians is a disease that can be cured. It's he called it a mental disease that needed to be taken care of, that needed to be cured. So there's persecution. You see everything. They won't allow teachers, if they talk about Christ or try to fight against something, they get fired. There's all kinds of persecution, kind of under the shelter, because the news, of course, is not going to mention it. You only hear it when you see good Christian ministries talk about it. This is following, and going according to Scripture too, there's a falling away of the church. That is scriptural. He said before he comes that there has to be a falling away. And it doesn't mean falling in numbers away from the church. It means the falling away of the true gospel. That there's so many that have become pro-homosexual, have been pro-Muslim, pro-Islam, you name it, pro-prosperity, but there's so much that's been falling away. Even the belief systems have changed, where you're okay, I'm okay. They believe in the New Age beliefs. And some of these are Pentecostal churches that do this, because there's such a falling away. You can look on TBN and different other areas and see different ministries that have fallen back, that are not teaching. Some of these ministers you see now, a few of them that are this way, their parents wasn't that way. They stood for the gospel. They stood up for all the truth. And then to see their children, I wonder, if the parents are still alive, I think, what in the world, But there is a falling away. There's just, what does the scripture says? There's going to be just a remnant. And I think Jim Baker said it recently when we were watching on his show. He says, thank God for the remnant, that we can stand up and still bring the light. And there's another article saying that FCC, the communication systems, has proposed to allow more sex and violence and filthy pornography, profanity language during the time that young children watch TV, saying it ain't going to bother them. It ain't going to matter. And I talked about some of these things before. Homosexuality is taught in the schools, completely full-blown. There even one article I read where they actually have the kids dress as the opposite sex so they can be tolerant of their feelings. They actually teach them and show them that. And they also have abortion taught in the schools. They have Planned Parenthood. In Oregon, all the schools have Planned Parenthood, can go in at any time and talk to the students about abortion. They also, I already mentioned about the Muslim ways are beginning to be taught. All those things in the schools. So they'll let all the things of the enemy in, but they won't let the things of God. The government is starting to collect, which they already have a lot more than we really realize they have, collecting data on everyone in the United States, in the world. They already doing some on internet, but they're proposing and trying to get it to where if you got a internet phone or any kind of system, where even your phone systems, they'll know exactly all your numbers, who you call, all the information about you. Well, the End Time talked about the government's going to know all these things. He knows who's going to buy and who's going to sell. And those discount cards for the grocery stores, this is part of the data collection information. They'll know exactly what your purchases are. So they know, okay, you're going to purchase this, and they know when you're buying stuff. They could come to you at the End Time. The scripture says if they can find who's buying and when what you're buying, and they say to determine their policies of purchasing power, to get the products you want, but it's all data collection. Their gay marriages, as we've heard, are legal in many places. I think there's 14, 15 states in the United States, and just recently, Paris had the biggest celebration with their first gay marriage. That was celebrated on TV, thousands of people to celebrate the first gay marriage in Paris. This I find was interesting because another one of the things the Scripture talks about before the end war can happen of the Armageddon War, and before Russia can come to Israel, and before they can come on the land, what does the Scripture say? They have to come by the Euphrates and Tigris River. Well, it's drying up. The Scripture says it'll open up to them. Well, it's dried up. It's virtually no more. Drought, and they said because of that, the poisonous snakes that live around the water is going into the city. But it's just like, wow. When it said drying up, I knew, because I knew what the Scripture said. It had to happen before the end, so that wars can happen. And there's many prophets and different things talking about America being falling completely. There was a movie out this summer that Hollywood has produced called White House Down. It shows Washington and the White House in flames. It's showing disaster or something hitting Washington, D.C. Because I've known for years that they always kind of produce prophetic movies. They don't even know they're doing it prophetically. They've had movies on asteroids. We're having asteroids, and the Bible talks about asteroids falling. I know the first time I realized it was years ago. They had Flaming Towers or something. I can't remember the name of the movie, talking about these high skyscrapers being on fire and no way to get to the people. Well, we're seeing some of those things come to pass. And they talked about tidal waves. They talk about tsunamis, and different movies do these things. And there's one out called talking about what's starting to happen, a virus. Can't remember what was it called, but anyway, there's a movie all based on a virus where thousands and thousands of people die before they could stop it. No way to stop it. Well, there is right now a virus starting around the world that comes from the animals, and John Paul Jackson talks about diseases from the animals that will mutate, come to the people, and people spread it to people. And Contagion is a movie I'm thinking of, Contagion. And that movie showed where a businesswoman went to China and had dinner and had a contaminated pig in her meal, the pigs in her meal, and she got sick, and everywhere she went spread the disease, and it spread very quickly. Well, they say this new chicken virus or whatever, carnovirus or whatever they call it, is, I just read this morning where an article said the death rate on this is 60%. So if you contract it, you got a 60% chance of dying. Of course, we know about the RFID chip that is to be implanted shortly with the Obamacare, and I'm seeing, even when we went to the doctor this time, I can feel the changes in the system, medical system, of the paperwork they required and stuff. And I thought, this is crazy, But the Obamacare, many doctors have quit their practices or changed and no longer accept. But they said with the Obamacare that it's required that the chip be implanted in people, but also the medical insurance will go up 100 to 400%. Things are in the works. Things are happening, but things have to happen before he comes. U.S. right now, this is non-Christian people are saying U.S. is on the verge of famine. And I just got prophecy last week from Shirley Carter in California saying that she saw famine hit the United States. There was a big famine. And of course, it's been in the different John Paul Jackson's and different ones that talked about the lack of food, and two or three others said there'd be famine. And I know God had told me that there would be no way to get food for at least 30 days on the grocery shelves, and people are not preparing. 30 days, at least 30 days, no food on the shelves, at least. And I know there was another prophet that said that a long time ago. There's more poor today, and there's more people on food stamps, even though our economy is supposed to be up and our unemployment rate down and all these things, supposedly, but they said there's more people on food stamps than ever before. More than ever before. But another article also says there's more poor and suicides, because, when you're going through something, you find suicide rate goes up when there's a lot of troubles. Well, they said there's more poor and suicide than even the Great Depression. Going on now. And they don't say we're in a depression. We are in a depression of some sorts. They said the suicide rate is skyrocketed, higher than Depression days. And they just killed themselves right and left in those days. The asteroids are hitting almost everywhere. In fact, just last Friday, an asteroid passed by the Earth, a huge asteroid. I think they said prior to that, the day or so before, a couple of small particles, I don't know if it was off of that one or just off of something else that hit Ohio. And different areas all over the world are being hit by asteroids. Jim Baker teaches that there's one that says that something will fall. He said in Revelations, the scripture, he did some research and said that shows it's a star falling, which is an asteroid. Another Hebrew term for asteroids. And we see sinkholes just about everywhere. And even with this extra flooding we've seen, all the things that's happening, he said that we've seen on the news, last night it was or something, after the flooding and the water, it washing the dirt away, that there looked like this big sinkhole. Part of the big highway was in Oklahoma City because of all their troubles. There's bad storms. We see that all the time. Storms that don't just normally happen, but they have a pattern. They say the tornado, you can't predict its position or how it's going to run. But there's a general direction that they go. But they're very unpredictable anyway. But they're in Kansas recently, where the one reversed itself and stayed in one place for a whole hour. Stayed in place. And they said in Oklahoma City, one of the first tornado that hit down there the other night, just went every direction. They couldn't predict it. So because the people were just getting off work or people were trying to get away from it, the highways was a parking lot of people. So cars, that's where the injuries mostly happen. Injuries and the deaths. There was 9 deaths with Oklahoma City because there were so many cars on the highway, and the tornadoes crossed the highways many times. The interstates, the main arteries of 44, 35. So there's so many storms, and they had 5 tornadoes in that town in one night. St. Louis had a couple of them. So, it's just like everywhere they go. And, of course, we've heard so many times lately, too, stories and news articles where there's tornadoes in other states that don't normally have them. There's tornadoes in other countries that don't have them. We're about the only one. When weather began, I guess they said the statistics showed that our Midwest was about the only one in the spot in the world where most of it happened. But there's a lot of other areas it's happening.